Cadillac fans, if you have a Cadillac CTS or base model CTS-V, you may be looking to upgrade your spoiler. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to install this GM accessory or blade spoiler. And if you're looking to upgrade to the carbon fiber bolt-on spoiler, this how-to will also be useful to you because the install is nearly the same. I'm going to give you all the important details right now. Hey folks, Daniel here, and if you haven't seen my other video where I tell you all about the spoiler options for your 3rd gen Cadillac CTS and CTS-V, be sure to check that out. I'll have a link right here for you as well as one at the end of the video. Now in this video, I'm going to be installing the GM accessory or blade spoiler on my Cadillac CTS V Sport. It's a great spoiler because it just adds a bit of sportiness to the car without being too aggressive. Now, if you're interested in getting that carbon fiber bolt-on spoiler like the CTS-V has, or you want to upgrade your CTS-V base spoiler, this installation is going to be very similar, so it will help you to watch this, to walk you through the process of installing it. Now, I like to get my parts from 404parts.com. They sell these GM accessory spoilers pre-painted to match your vehicle for a great price shipped. And right now, if you're a Jet Fuel only subscriber, check the description below. You might find a special promo when you buy one of these spoilers from 404parts.com, but it's for a limited time only. Be sure to visit their website. There's lots of cool stuff for your Cadillac and other GM cars. And if you don't see a part you need there, just send them a message and they'll hook you up with a great price and get that part out to you as soon as possible. Now, installing this is actually pretty easy. It just requires some basic hand tools. No really drilling is required. And the installation is pretty similar to if you have a carbon fiber bolt-on spoiler. I'm going to cover all the details with you because there are some things I want you to pay attention to in the install. All right, let's get to installing the GM accessory spoiler. For this installation, you'll need the following tools. You'll want deep sockets, 7mm, 8mm, and 10mm. An extension will be helpful to do some reaching. A ratchet, of course, to drive them. But you know I like my Ryobi power screwdriver. It's small, compact, and cheap. You'll want some vice grips when adjusting the tension on the trunk spring. A flathead screwdriver is handy unless your pry tool has a small tip on it. I love this pry tool, I use it the most, but you may need something more substantial like this one when pulling the retainers from the trunk liner, or maybe even a metal one. Links to all these tools can be found in the description below. To get started, let's open the trunk. First, we need to remove the interior trunk handle. It's here. There's a little access door that can be opened up with either a flathead screwdriver or your trim removal tool. Inside, you'll see a 7mm hex screw. Remove that screw. Then just pull the handle straight out. Next, we'll remove this latch cover. It's just clipped in. Use your tool to pry it away. Next, we need to remove the trunk liner. There are metal clips holding the trunk liner in, so slide your trim tool in and find where the metal clips are and pry at that point. Mine had 9, but it probably used to have 10 at one point. You can see them all here on the back of the liner. Now you can leave it here if you like, but don't close the trunk like that. Or you can remove the liner. It's pretty easy to pull off. Now that that's out of the way, we can disconnect the brake light. It's just right here with this clip. Squeeze and pull it apart. Now there are 4 nuts holding the brake light on. So we just need to remove those. It doesn't matter which one you start on. I'm just going to start here. They're most likely 8mm nuts, and I think the kit for the spoiler comes with 10. I don't recall, and my car's been through some changes in the past years. Before removing the last nut, lower the trunk and hold onto the brake light while removing the last nut. This will ensure that it doesn't fall off the trunk. Now generally it shouldn't because it should have this blue clip holding it in, which you need to squeeze and release to let the brake light come free. But mine's already broken off, so I needed to hold onto that brake light. Once it's fully free, carefully pull it straight out from the trunk. But be careful, those metal studs will scratch your trunk if you drop it. Let's take a look at our 2 parts. Obviously one is really flat and the other one has a nice blade shape to it. There's definitely a difference, but otherwise they're paint matched really well. On the back side, you'll see there are some differences. All the studs on the stock brake light are built into the brake light. While on the blade spoiler, the studs come from the spoiler and protrude through the brake light. You can actually separate the brake light from the new spoiler. This doesn't work like that on the stock piece. And you can see the spoiler has its own bolts protruding and they go right through the brake light's holes. This is why the carbon fiber spoiler needs a new brake light. It needs one like this. The old one doesn't work unless you drill out the studs. With the carbon spoiler, the bolts actually come in through the underside of the trunk, pass through the brake light, and then go into the spoiler itself. Owners who have installed the carbon spoiler suggest getting hex bolts kind of like these. These are M6 1x25. You also may consider putting down some double-sided tape around the borders of the carbon spoiler to help seal it on really nice. Back to the blade spoiler. There is one design flaw, and everyone's pretty much experienced this until they've made a modification. Here at the ends, the spoiler sits just above the trunk, and those ends under high speed will flex, or when you slam the trunk, and then they end up scratching the trunk underneath like this. I've actually already tried to touch mine up. So what I suggest is getting some washers to raise the spoiler about 1 millimeter or so up off at least these end holes. I just ended up buying these hose washers. These worked fine, maybe even a little overkill. If you can find neoprene washers that are the right size, I would definitely use those. I ended up only adding washers to the 2 outer end pieces, and yet somehow the center sections are still sealed up and not leaking in the trunk. I'm actually kind of surprised. Here I'm laying them down on the brake light, but they won't really stay, so actually you need to lay them down on top of the trunk. So clean the trunk up well with some 70% isopropyl alcohol or something, and then go ahead and lay down your washers. Once those are in place, you can carefully install the brake light. Make sure to route the cable through the large hole. Then align all the pins with the trunk. Now remember this blue clip? You're going to use that blue clip to snap the brake light into place. That should hold it securely while you add on the spoiler. You could, of course, already have the spoiler sort of attached to the brake light, but it can come off easily. But if you hadn't done that, go ahead and add the spoiler on top of the brake light. Carefully slide those bolts through the brake light. Once that's in place, open the trunk while holding the spoiler in place. Make sure you have at least one of your nuts with you in your hand. Reach up there and get one of the nuts started so the spoiler won't move. Once you're confident the spoiler's not going anywhere, go ahead and tighten up all 4 nuts. They don't have to be that tight, only about 6 foot-pounds, which is not too far beyond finger tight, and even a small ratchet should be enough to get them nice and snug. Next, don't forget to re-plug in your 3rd brake light. Otherwise, you're going to be wondering why it's not coming on. All right, now we can put the liner back on the trunk lid. Just reverse the process from before. Hook it onto the supports and then raise it up and snap it into place. But be careful, this is the emergency release handle. Make sure you slide that through. If you don't and your trunk gets stuck, you're gonna have a hard time getting it open. Then gently tap in all those metal clips that you released earlier. Each one should go in with a nice snap. Now reinstall the trunk pull handle. It just snaps back into place and then is secured with that 7mm hex screw. Be sure to close the little cover over the screw. Then snap the plastic cover over the trunk latch. All right, it's installed. Now you can admire that new spoiler, but there's more to do. If you try to open your trunk, it may open much slower or not at all like it used to. That's because the spoiler is a little heavier. So we'll need to go in and try to adjust the springs that help the trunk open up. They're located on each side, and to access them, you need to pull these 2 plastic retainers on each side. They're pretty tough. I call them Christmas tree retainers because they're kind of like little barbed Christmas trees. Once you pry those out, you'll have access to the springs. Just pull the liner away and here's the spring. and it's hooked on to the frame right here, and there's 3 settings. You probably only need to move it to the middle setting. It's a pretty tough spring, so if you accidentally unhook it, it's going to be very difficult to get it rehooked on, but it's not impossible. I've done it. To get a better grip, I like to use vice grips on the end of the spring. This creates a little handle. And then I use one hand to try to remove tension from the spring, and I use the other hand with the vice grips to pull the spring over to the next notch. In this case, I moved it all the way to the hole. You don't have to do that, just move it to the next notch. As I said, if you pull it all the way out, you're gonna have a hard time rehooking it up. Once that's done, tuck in the trunk liner again and replace those plastic retainers. Test the trunk out, and if it still doesn't rise like you want it to, go ahead and make the same adjustment to the other spring. My left spring was actually already at max tension, so I just moved the right one from the least tension to max tension, and just check out the difference that made. Alright, that's it to installing the GM accessory spoiler. I bet it was a lot easier than you expected, right? All basic hand tools, and now you didn't go pay the dealer to do something you totally could have done yourself. If you like this video, please show me by hitting that like button. It means a lot to the channel. Also subscribe and consider hitting the bell to be notified when future videos come out. Thanks so much for watching the Jet Fuel Only channel. I'll see you next time. Street cleaning. Now we went around the corner to the back of the house. Okay, I think he's gone.